wanted to take us to a place where they're also experiencing a little bit of hardship. War and Fleece is the headline on tomorrow's Tiser, your hometown paper. South Australians are paying the financial cost of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with petrol approaching $2 a litre and other costs likely to rise. Russian exports of about 5% of the global oil, and the current barrel price is a US $92 a barrel, expected to soar above a US $100 amid surging inflation around the world. Look, financial journos probably just absolutely pinched the middle of their noses when I read that all about bunkum, Caleb, but I guess this is the reality of which we're going to have to start living with moving forward. Inflation plus all of the issues happening within Russia and then across Europe.
Yeah, and I mean, they were sort of already bad enough as they were in terms of inflation and petrol prices and all this sort of thing. But the reality is that a lot of the world's energy and oil and the like does come out of Russia, particularly what is being supplied to Europe, which is, of course, why you're now seeing some European nations seemingly keen to appease Russia because they don't want all of their energy to be cut off. That would put them in a spot of bother as well. But unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about this. We are going to pay for it in some way or another. We can hope, of course, that this doesn't end up in full-scale warfare between Russia and Ukraine, but we are going to pay for it in some way in terms of oil prices. We're going to pay for it in financial markets in terms of inflation. We've just got to buckle in and bear it, really. There's not much we can do.
Yeah, indeed. It's a story that's obviously leading the national broadsheet tomorrow with The Australian, where the headline is Sanctions Strike on Russia. Australia has joined Western allies in imposing sanctions against Vladimir Putin's inner circle and cut off Russian banks from international finance markets in a coordinated punishment for his forces' invasion of Ukraine. Scott Morrison said the sanctions were only the start and warned of possible Russian retaliation against Australia in the form of cyber attacks. Cyber attacks and foreign interference seems to be a pretty popular talking point of the government these days, Caleb. Do you think that this is going to put the government on a good footing when it comes to the voters of Australia?
Well, generally when you have some form of crisis, people rally behind the incumbent because, of course, it's at a time of crisis, people want to feel like they have something they can get behind and they can believe in and there is some stability. And so generally it encourages people to not go towards a change of government. It's exactly the same phenomenon we've seen basically around the world, particularly here in Australia, particularly in WA when it came to coronavirus. People have backed in incumbent governments because they wanted consistency and they've been generally happy with the way that state governments have dealt with these things. If things get worse in Ukraine and Russia, I'm sure people will be looking for strong leadership from Australia and that will bode well for Scott Morrison. But the only problem really is there's nothing we can do. I mean, we can have these piddly little sanctions that we're instituting now, but as Greg Sheridan writes in the Oz tomorrow, I mean, really for Putin, this has been, it's like being hit over the head with a wet lettuce. There's not a lot we can really do. If he wants to invade Ukraine, he's going to do it. He doesn't give a toss whether we impose some sanctions on 8 people from Russia or whether we block some of their banks or whatever. He will do what he wants, and that is to try and reform the USSR. It doesn't matter one iota what we do. Having said that, we do have to try and look strong for the sake of the West, and that'll look good to voters, but it won't achieve anything.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think it's all about bluster and the fact that we could kick out the ambassador tomorrow, but what would that achieve? Because if old mate's got a plan, old mate's definitely got a plan.